Hello fellow watchers and enjoyers. This is a video about the facts about EastEnders that you did not know. This is me, Piggy, and I'm joined by Ash. And yeah, this is just going to have the two-camera format with the Reddit, as I'm feeling lazy and I'm like Ross Kemp. I'm fried after doing this for a long time. But if you have anything interesting, I will switch. So yeah, do you want to? Will I start reading it, or do you have anything to chime in with that you know about the show before I start?
I mean, it's always a fun thing with little facts. Because facts, they're not really everybody's cup of tea. Some people absolutely thrive on them, and other people are like little trivia nerds. Like, oh, I love facts. Facts are great. And then other people are just like, great. Who cares? Who cares who insert character was supposed to be originally, but they weren't? It's a funny one. People either love them, they hate them, or they don't care.
Yeah. So let's just start it off with this Redditor, Popsy13, says, I'll read the names of the most memorable ones and then the other names will be on screen. Share your little known facts about the show, Popsy13 says, and he said they said they'll go first. Rowley, Den, Angie and Sharon's dog was owned by executive producer Julia Smith. That dog must have been through fucking hell. Yeah, we're fine. It's a minute 26. We're fine.
Yeah, just checking the timer. I mean, that's kind of cool bit of trivia.
Yeah.
I wonder if that dog got its own contract. You know, just Julia Smith getting all that money in. To be fair, it meant that they wouldn't have to pay for someone to handle the dog. So a dog. So a dog. It's fine, easy. That's cool. I do like that one.
I do like that one. Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes it's executive producers like, I'm just gonna get my own stuff in. It's the only one I know. The only fun fact I know about movies is like in Deadpool and Wolverine. They got like Deadpool's just one of these kids or Ryan Reynolds one of these kids in the movie. So he just got his wife to play Lady Deadpool, his children to play Kid Deadpool, and I believe another Deadpool, and that's kind of cool in my eyes. Just being like, yeah, I'm going to contract my family. I don't care what you say. Or if you're a wrestling fan, then obviously you would know that Bret Hart wants brought in all his family, and the less said about Bruce Hart, the better. Yeah, there you go. There's some facts that I wanted to share. So this user, Accomplished KL 77, chimes in and says, Den, Angie, and Sharon were originally going to be called Jack, Pearl, and Tracy.
Yeah, I mean, this was all mentioned in the EastEnders, the Inside Story, the cool little book that they made, kind of commemorating the production and the building to the initial, building to their initial, like, as they were building up the show and what Tony Holland and Julia Smith, what they were both doing and I mess up the names. I changed them. Julia Smith, Tony Holland. There we are. But it was what the original characters they were going to have, what they originally set out to be, where they came from, like how they found Ethel Skinner. She was based off a real woman who would bring her dog in one hand and would have a stout and a cigarette in the other, like cigarette in the mouth, dog in the hand, stout in the other, and would just read tea leaves down in the pub. It's wild how. Because they wanted proper like East End characters, right? So it's a funny little. It's just kind of cool when you think about where it all started. But I don't entirely remember. I believe, yeah, Angie was gonna be. So Den was gonna be Jack, Angie was Pearl, and Sharon was Tracy. So it's kind of a. For some reason, I expected Sharon to be called Pearl in her own way because the Den kind of conversation. But yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of cool stuff about early EastEnders. Like I recently just learned, and I'm pretty sure this is in this Reddit thread. But like, Angie Watts wasn't originally supposed to be played by Anita Dobson. Like, she wasn't even the original Angie. Like, I'd have to do more research, but I'm pretty sure someone talks about it later. So. But it's cool how so much of this stuff kind of shapes up through time.
Yeah, and I'll continue on. Derek Martin, who played Charlie Slater, originally auditioned for both Den and Frank Butcher. I can't imagine anyone playing Frank Butcher other than Mike Reid. I can't.
Or Den either. those two are wild. Because Charlie Slater played this unassuming, bumbling idiot. So imagine the bow tie scene. Imagine that's sexual harassment. If he does it, if Mike Reed does it, whoa. And Den as well. Like, it was so weird. And even when they selected Den, they picked Leslie Grantham, being like, "Yeah, he just has a bit of darkness behind his eyes." It's just like,
Yeah.
yep, definitely had a bit of that. Definitely had a bit of that, didn't he? They weren't wrong.
No.
They were not wrong. But like, when they were casting a bunch of people, it's kind of weird how it manifested. One thing that was kind of fun, and I suppose it can go into more like the 85 kind of period, is obviously a lot of the actors were pretty resistant when they were going to change executive producers and the bosses when Julia Smith and Tony Holland left, because they were scared about what the show was going to look like, because nobody really expected the show to first become as big as it was, which was wholly unexpected, and second, they were worried where they would take it. So you have a bunch of the actors who were prominent in the 80s, but very quickly into the 90s kind of quickly vanished. Like Anna Wing, who played Lou Beale. I think she was killed off in like 88, roughly. Or just generally before the change of producers, and she went. I'm pretty sure she did an interview where it's like, yeah, if I knew it was going to be this big, I probably would have stayed. And you had like Pete Beale, who was religiously going to be killed off because the writers just wanted to kill him off. But then when he left in like 94, 95, he did this big like tell-all expose where he talked about how him and Leslie Grantham didn't get along, and despite being best friends on screen, they were fed up, and how he kept kind of being fed up. And you had like you had Bill Treat, who played Arthur, who was like, yeah, well, I didn't really know why they made it so like sensationalized, and it was all like, it went from being a really big like crime-based or family-based drama to being more like crime, and it's kind of fun to see how when EastEnders made the transition, because they kind of had to make the transition into going a bit more grittier in the 90s. It was kind of a necessary thing to help it stand out more dramatically. And at that point, there wasn't as much of the crime stuff around. Like, it was kind of necessary for them to change that direction. It's always fun to see how people kind of reacted to it in time, because a lot of the early characters, and even then, so like, obviously Julia Smith, Tony Holland, they didn't really want they didn't want their characters to be ruined in the future by the new writers. So it's like, oh, Den's dying. Like, well, no, it's a black screen death. All right, we're leaving then. Piss off. Piss off. They're our characters. We made them. You're not doing anything with them. So they got really protective over them. So, yeah, it's wild. It's just cool.
I will continue on. Lacey.
Oh, yeah, and just the thing about Derek Martin. It's so weird. It's so weird to imagine. Because obviously you wouldn't be playing Charlie Slater, but still, we know him as Charlie Slater. It would be so odd to see him as landlord of the Queen Vic, this unassuming life controlled by his kids, or Frank Butch. Night and day. Mental.
Kelly Bright. Linda originally auditioned for Tanya Brannan.
That's also a strange one.
That's a multiverse.
That also I don't think would work at all. But hey, she did eventually get with Max, so. Nah, I don't. See, it's hard to think about characters who have been long established for these roles, because it's all we knew. Maybe it would have made more sense. Is the main problem, but it's just, yeah, it's kind of crazy. I mean, there's a bunch of characters who were originally set to play a different role, and then eventually were recast into being like a main role. Like, I think I'm trying to remember her actual name. Shirley Carter. I believe she played Lorraine Salter originally. She was someone's mum in the 90s, and she was like Mandy's mum in the 90s. And obviously that didn't really go anywhere. Denise played a singer, despite the fact that she's very open to the fact she can't sing. Karen Taylor played Lindsay Bragg's mum, the teenager who was chatting to Jay that he didn't know was underage. It's always kind of fun to see where all of these other characters have been seen but never really done. And you also have like Cherie. I'm pretty Cherie's usually plays like a barrister in the courtroom, plays a judge. Like Sookie, like all these characters, they typically, if they are supposed to be like soap potentials, they're usually an extra in one of the scenes, usually a policeman. Like you do see a lot of the famous faces that you know of now in different roles in a much different place, just being like an extra. Kind of funny how it works in Soapland.
Yeah. Next fact: Lacey Turner initially auditioned for Demi Miller, but they were so impressed by her they created the role of Stacey just for her.
Rightfully so. Rightfully so. Stacey Slater was fantastic, and she still is, and will always will be. And obviously, Demi Miller was useless.
It's like the fact we know of like the actress who played Haley Slater. They immediately got her a role because they just seen her scrapping at it. Was it a bus stop?
I mean, it's like Shane Ritchie. It's like Alfie Moon was written for Shane Ritchie. Like it was written for Shane Ritchie, and it was. I'm not saying it was based on Tony Jordan, like a famous like EastEnders writer, but it was pretty much a mix of A, a mix of B.
Yeah. And the last fact by Accomplished Kale 77. Yeah, I did look at the replies by the way. So yeah, the last fact by Accomplished Kale 77 is Ian has been involved in all 4 of the biggest whodunits on the show. He was the only character to be a suspect in all 3 of Who Shot Phil, Who Killed Lucy, and Who Killed Archie, and then was the victim of his own, and Sharon and Phil were planning to kill him.
Makes sense. Ian's always been that weasel. You know, he's always involved somehow, and he's always synonymous. So it makes sense. There's always been good reason.
Yeah. So continuing on. I don't want to open the replies to this one, but the show wanted and planned for nasty Nick Cotton to be revealed as being gay. John Altman reviews.
Yeah, this one is. I'm pretty sure he even talked about it, but it was one of those things, and we could even talk about the Mark Fowler thing as well, where they'd never really explicitly talked about Nick's sexuality as such, and it was suggested that Julia is it Julia? Yeah, it's Julia Smith. Julia Smith. They wanted Lofty and Nick to have a gay relationship, but neither were particularly keen on doing it. And the one thing that people would come to learn, you don't really say no to old Julia. You don't really say it because Nick was then written out very quickly. He was written out very quickly, and yeah, I don't know why. Obviously, it would be kind of cool. Honestly, I think it would be more fun if Nick was bisexual. Personally, I think it would be more fun just to see Nick just doing whatever he wants. But probably a step too early for EastEnders to really tackle that sort of thing.
So instead,
but yeah, it is an actual thing.
So instead of saying hello, Ma, he just goes, "Hello, Daddy. Hello, Daddy." Oh, there you go.
Make it stop. I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, Mark Fowler Jr. Well, not Mark Fowler Jr. Actual Mark Fowler, rather. He was supposed to be a really big part of early EastEnders because he was like the oldest of the younger cast, right? So he was tipped to be a part of all these big dramatic storylines. But and initially they were having him be groomed by Nick to kind of be involved in like a national front type kind of. You get the idea, right? You get the idea, like drugs against minorities, put 2 and 2 together. But he was supposed to racially abuse Calvin Carpenter. But David Scarborough, the actor, went, not doing that. Which, first and foremost, in 85, in 85, young budding actor willing to risk his job by defending like a person of color and not wanting to racially abuse him. Obviously, it's all acting. It's not like it's genuine, but still actually taking his stand, risking his job, risking his livelihood to take a stand and say, "I will not do that. I don't want to do that." It's pretty crazy for 85. And yeah, he was written out pretty sharply. He was never, and it honestly, as I've always kind of talked about, it's a really sad story with David Scarborough. He was a very talented actor, but he got this big role. The press hounded him consistently. He was a young kid who'd moved up to London after being in like a small town, like, and the media had a feeding day because soap stars were suddenly really like hot topic and really fun to write stories about. So just hounded by the press. There is a story called, it's either My Brother David or My Brother Mark, and it goes through the whole story, but it really is a pretty, it's My Brother David, there we are. So it was made by his brother, but it's a really kind of dark story. And yeah, Mark Fowler was written out, and he was, despite being on the edges of being brought back consistently, he was never given that full-time role again. But yeah, it sucks, and it's a sad one. But yeah, he opted to not racially abuse Calvin Carpenter, took a stand, said, "I'm not doing this," and Julia Smith proceeded to write him out, and he was never a regular until they recasted him as Todd Carty. So
Yeah. I was just looking at the reply. So yeah, that was by ST Pony. Congrats on you. Kabuki Wind chimes in and says Patsy Palmer's brother is married to Lindsay Coulson, so they play mother and daughter as Carl and Bianca, but are really sisters and all. It's like the famous fact about Mrs. Brown's Boys, with the guy who plays Mrs. Brown and his daughter in the show are actually husband and wife in real life. That's that's very weird. He even jokes about going like he goes up to his wife and he's like, "Who's your mammy? Who's your mammy?" Because obviously he plays her man in the show.
yeah,
I'm just gonna say this. Like, I know people don't care, but the Mrs. Brown's Boys, like, if you don't know, that entire family, like I think nearly half of the show is like made up of family members, because I think they pretty much went, yeah, we've got a TV show, so we're just going to grab this guy here. He's actually our old like guy who used to clean the toilets for us. Yeah, he's coming in now. He's granddad. It's just it was a weird fucking like find when I found out.
but yeah, I mean, even in the same way, mentioning Patsy Palmer, this was kind of openly talked about in Big Brother. She's not even called Patsy Palmer. It's not even a name.
Yeah.
That's her name is Julie Ann Merkel. She's not even called Patsy Palmer, and her name came from her nan, I believe, which is where she took the name from. But yeah, that's not me knowing stuff. I'll watch the recent series of Celebrity Big Brother. So that was the revelation from there.
Continuing on, Emma Bunton auditioned for FT Pony chimes in again. Emma Bunton auditioned for and was nearly cast as Bianca. Who is Emma Bunton? Because I don't think I've ever heard of that.
It's Baby Spice.
Okay.
From the Spice Girls.
Never knew the fucking Spice Girls, honestly. So, before my time.
Did she do anything else soap wise? Not really. Yeah, no. I mean, I mean, Spice Girls ridiculously famous, anyways. Like, so it would have been a wholly different thing.
Tiara Mago has chimed in and says they wanted to get rid of Pete Bill quite a few times before eventually going ahead with it off screen in 1993. His death was planned as early as late 1985, 1986 for New Year's from a heart attack, but this didn't go ahead. Instead of New Year's storyline featured the arrival of Den's mistress Jan, who was supposed to be a mysterious off-screen figure, symbolised only by the fifth landline for a bit longer. There were plans by killing Peter. This is my favourite fact. There were plans to try killing Pete again in 1989. This time in an IRA bombing. Now, for context, I'm gonna put this out here. Pretty much in the 80s, the reason why I love this fact and also kind of hate it, because if you don't know, in the 80s there was a lot of history between the IRA and basically Northern Ireland. So doing this like in the height of the conflicts in Northern Ireland at that time, it it would have not worked. It would have like caused backlash. I want to say, um, the only example I can give, and it's a wrestling example. It's kind of like the day the London attacks happened, but obviously they recorded something for SmackDown, where they had this wrestler where he brings out a faction and they're supposed to like chalk up the Undertaker. But obviously they're supposed to be Muslims basically attacking him in storyline, and it just did not go down well because of obviously the London bombings that went on that day, and it would have been pretty much the exact same thing to me. Like if this had happened in '89, just getting the IRA involved.
Yeah,
But
it's probably a bit too much too soon.
yeah, it would have also like because I think at that time also they couldn't like if Jerry Adams, who is not associated with the IRA, I have to clarify that. But when they would like get him to talk about Northern Ireland troubles, they had to kind of pitch up his voice. That's where the famous bit of Steve Coogan playing him doing the balloon bit comes from. If you didn't know that, they have to pitch up his voices when he was on BBC and shit. So there you go. There's another fact for you. Stephen's death was also originally planned much earlier than 2017, around 1990, shortly after his premature birth on Boxing Day 1989. If you see,
I suppose just for the Pete Beale one, yeah, Pete Beale was honestly, in terms of all the abandoned storylines, which we have done a video on before. I was gonna write like a script on it, and but I never got to it. But yeah, there's so many like stuff about Pete Beale where it's like, and Pauline. It's basically Pete Beale and Pauline were like, they're gonna die. We're gonna kill Pauline and Pete off. They're gonna die. It'll be great. And then they never did, but they just really wanted both of them to be killed off. And like it was funny that even in '91, it was once again talked about Pete Beale potentially being killed off, and they went, nah, Pete Beale's irreplaceable. You'd never get rid of him, and then he gets killed off 2 years later. It's funny how times change, honestly. And then obviously he had a scathing review of EastEnders, but even then he also said, "Would you go back?" Yeah, for good. Just actors, man. They can't be helped. Look how Pete Beale, he always drank from a tankard because he's a Buddhist and he doesn't drink alcohol. So he would just be drinking like lemonade and stuff from his tankard.
Oh, he's
Yeah.
That's another fun fact. There you go.
Yeah. See, I was doing research. I did research that bit.
Do you have anything on Stephen Beale?
No. Also, I mean, this is also Pete Beale's exit also culminated with Dot's exit as well, because she was pretty close with Pete Beale. And they started their own like production company and wanted to do their own stuff, but it never really went anywhere. And she eventually went back. In terms of Stephen, yeah, they wanted to kill him when he was a kid. In the show, YouTube. They wanted to get rid of him a lot more. But yeah, they just I don't know. They just really hated the Beales apparently. And it's continued to this day, let's be honest.
If you see the writer of an episode being credited as Julia Honor, she's not a real person. It's a pseudonym used when an entire script has to be rewritten by the editing team. It's believed to mean in Julia Smith's honor. There hasn't been a Julia Honor credit since 2018, if I recall correctly, but she did write some iconic episodes, including Janine's Jewish wedding, where Pat's bacon sandwich line comes from.
Yeah, that's really cool. I never knew that. It's a really fun little bit of information. So yeah, just keep an eye out if you ever see Julia Honor, because she's not real, and that just means that the writing team had to scramble to piece something together. Because most scripts are written by one person, and then they get the writing credits, and they pen the whole script, and people go through it and make notes, etc. But yeah, that's really cool. That's a nice little bit of lore. I think that's probably the most fun one so far.
Yeah, and that's by Tia Mango. Mago. Sorry I butchered her name. I just like reading out the names, by the way. I just want to give credit to everyone who's chimed in. So I know that you can see the names, but I just like saying the names. Moonlight Gems Art chimes in and says, Phil was meant to be blinded in a soldering. Oh, Phil was meant to be blinded in a soldering accident in the Arctic around 93-ish. So Steve McFadden was against it. The accident still happened and Phil hurt his eye. But obviously there was no long-term damage. Talking of Steve McFadden.
I mean, that's fair enough. I suppose before there was just like a hidden reply, but
Oh.
back in the Juliana it says Juliana was the authorship pseudonym appended to a script when a member of the editorial staff had to take over and completely rewrite a dreadfully poor and thus unsavable early draft from a commission writer. So Julia's honor is you fucked up. Despite the name, it is not an honor to get Julia's honor. It's not an honor.
Yeah, like I said, talking of Steve McFadden, Danielle Westbrook overdosed on set and collapsed, but was told by, I think, the director to pack it in and get on with her job. Steve McFadden and Ross Kemp said they would quit and refuse point blank to film anything. They would quit and refuse point blank to film anything unless they took the Pearl Girl to hospital. Top Big Brothers there.
Good Christ!
I love all the.
That's horrendous.
I like love Pete Bill IRA bombing. What next? We have Julia Honor where you write a shit script. Overdosed on set. Wow, Jesus.
I mean, it was pretty. Her issues on set were pretty well documented, and the media had a frenzy with it. But yeah, no one should just be. If somebody ODs, you don't just go, oh, just pack it in, man, pack it in. You silly bugger. What are you doing? Obviously, you go, right, we need to stop now. Like, they need help right now. Kind of crazy.
Blind Phil sounds interesting. I'm imagining him being kind of like Al Pacino's character in Scent of a Woman.
Yeah, I suppose after this one, we could probably separate for a part 2. But Phil being blind would be interesting, especially with Ben's struggles as such, where Ben obviously struggles with his hearing, so it'd be interesting. I mean, I still think it would be more interesting if he was blind in one eye as such, but you can understand why you would be against getting rid of Phil's eyesight, because this is also so early in with Phil's storylines, and you would have to change how the character acts and responds, and it would probably, like, obviously he would do a good job of it as an actor, but fundamentally, I feel like most people would probably choose, if they had the option, to not play a blind character, and possibly because it's a soap and he was such a prominent character, maybe do a disservice by trying to look past things. Like, I'm sure he would have done a good job of it, but you can probably understand why he didn't really want to do it.
And I'll read one more fact. Well, I'm gonna read 2 more facts just because I'm gonna read Big White Fishy's last comment first. In 1997, Grant was supposed to write Tiffany on Christmas Day, but Ross Kemp refused. Just getting out of the way very quickly. There you go. And then EastEnders made history by the first ever soap to have a single person episode, solo episode. So there are your 2 facts for the end of part.
As just for a small bit of the Grant one, yeah, this killed EastEnders for Grant. This was him pretty much saying, all right, all right, that is unthinkable. Like, why? Like, yes, Grant and Tiffany's relationship was pretty toxic, and no one really came out of it smelling roses. But you don't do that to Grant, right? Grant's kind of the golden boy in his own right. He kind of is like the soap's like favorite, and that would just make an unquestionable black spot for the character. So, and yeah, this obviously did culminate with this did result with Grant deciding, I've had enough of this. Like, that's way too much. So, and it was supposed to be on, and especially it was supposed to be on Christmas Day. That would be absolutely brutal to watch. Like, good Lord. So I'm very thankful that was never actually done, because good Christ, that would have been horrendous to watch.
And we will see you in part 2. Just very quickly. We'll move on from that. See you in part 2.